Rules Committee come to order, and good evening, and I'm delighted to be with us back at the Rules Committee. Lacey, it's good to see you. Mr. Chairman, it's good to see you. Tonight, we will be considering H.R. 1694, the Fannie and Freddie Open Records Act of 2017, and H.R. 1695, the Register of Copies Rights Selection and Accountability Act of 2017. While under conservatorship, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac received $187.5 billion in taxpayer funds through a shareholder agreement, which gave the federal government controlling shares of both of these failing institutions. Despite Congress requiring other quasi-governmental entities such as Amtrak to comply with the Freedom of Information Act, known as FOIA, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are not subject to such requirements. H.R. 1694 corrects this by requiring both entities to be subject to freedom of information, so long as they remain in conservatorship. H.R. 1695, the second bill and the second rule under consideration, amends Title 17 of the United States Code to provide additional responsibility for the Registry of Copyrights. Specifically, it would make the Register of Copyrights a position nominated from a pool of qualified candidates recommended by a congressional leadership panel that includes the Librarian of Congress, nominated by the President and confirmed by the United States Senate. H.R. 1695 is the first step in a long process that allows the Copyright Office to function as it should, given the leader of the office should be the same level of importance as other government officials who oversee industries that are often smaller, but who have influence and value on our nation's economy. It also helps resolve constitutional concerns, legal concerns, regarding the authority of regulations promulgated by the U.S. Copyright Office. This has been in, I believe, some bit of detail for several years, a discussion not only on this, but the answer that would ensue from it, and I'm delighted that we are here today to look at both of these issues. I would like to welcome, obviously, the gentleman from Utah, the young chairman of the committee, and I recognize that he was on TV over the weekend. Mr. Chairman, we're glad that you're here today, as well as the gentleman from Missouri, my dear friend Lacey Clay, as our first panel. Without objection, anything you have in writing will be entered into the record. We're delighted that you're here. And before I move further, I'd like to yield to the ranking member, the gentleman from Massachusetts, for any opening statement. Gentlemen,
well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have absolutely nothing to add to what you said, other than to welcome our panelists and look forward to the hearing. So thank you.
Thank you very much. We're delighted that you're here. Lacey, how was the break?
Wonderful. How was yours?
It's amazing how much fun you can have at home, sleeping in your own bed. You know, waking up and, yeah. Well, I know our young chairman enjoyed it too. The chairman's recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss H.R. 1694, the Fannie and Freddie Open Records Act of 2017. The Oversight and Government Reform Committee held a hearing on this topic, and then we held a markup where it soundly passed out of the committee. As you know, taxpayers are responsible for at least $400 billion in losses for investments and $5 trillion, with a T, trillion in mortgage liabilities at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Since 2008, Fannie and Freddie have been wholly under the control of the federal government when the Federal Housing Finance Agency, also known as FHFA, placed them in conservatorship in 2008. When Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac were placed in conservatorship, the FHFA was given, quote, all rights, titles, powers, and privileges of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and of any stockholder, officer, or director, end quote. Despite the massive burden to the taxpayers, Fannie and Freddie have escaped accountability by not adhering to the requirements of the Freedom of Information Act. While under the FHFA conservatorship, Fannie and Freddie should comply with FOIA, just like any other federal agency where the government controls these corporations. In H.R. 1694, we'll put an end to taxpayers being left in the dark despite their massive stake in these two entities. Fannie and Freddie Open Record Act of 2017 clarifies the intent of FOIA. Government-owned and controlled entities like Fannie and Freddie are covered by FOIA. H.R. 1694 is narrowly tailored to apply FOIA to Fannie and Freddie only when they are under conservatorship. If the conservatorship ends, FOIA requirements end as well. This bill is necessary to give taxpayers the accountability they deserve for bailing out Fannie and Freddie for $187.5 billion. Fannie and Freddie cannot continue to escape this oversight and accountability. FOIA will help us and the American public ask the questions that need to be asked. Fannie and Freddie Open Records Act of 2017 is simply a government transparency. It is short, sweet, to the point, and I think is the appropriate cause of action. And like I said, Mr. Chairman, we had a hearing, we had a good, vibrant discussion, and then we soundly passed it out of the committee. And I appreciate the consideration here today. Yield back.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Congressman Clay, we're delighted that you're here. Quite honestly, I'll be blunt, you being up here is a shot in the arm for us. I've known you for a long, long time to express not only your opinion, but to come up with good ideas too, and the gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and to the members of the committee. I'm delighted to be back, and I agree with Chairman Chaffetz, who sponsored this legislation, that taxpayers have the right to information about Fannie and Freddie. During the committee markup of this bill, committee Democrats raised some practical concerns with the bill that needed to be addressed. Since that time, the FHFA provided the committee with additional feedback. And I appreciate that Chairman Chaffetz seriously considered that feedback and has submitted an amendment to this committee to address the most pressing concerns. I support the Chaffetz amendment, which would make several important improvements to the underlying bill. The Chaffetz amendment would provide Fannie and Freddie 6 months to implement the bill. This time is important to ensure that they have staff and procedures in place to process FOIA requests. And the amendment would also make clear that Fannie and Freddie could use the exemption in FOIA just as they can be used by any federal agency. And the amendment clarifies that Fannie and Freddie could use exemption 4 of FOIA in the same way that the FHFA currently uses it to protect trade secrets and commercial or financial information generated by Fannie and Freddie. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes my testimony.
Ms. Clay, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, what you've tried to do here is really a transparency issue. I don't know, because I've not been really attuned to it, have there been significant questions that have arisen about decision-making or decisions that the committee has had problems with in dealing with getting answers from either of these agencies?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you know, FOIA is really intended so that the media, the public, the people who are on the financial hook can ask the questions that they want to ask. What we heard testimony from is there were some particularly good government groups who sought information that was being denied that under a normal government operation would be subject to FOIA, but they were not able to access that. And what we had heard from Fannie and Freddie is that, hey, we're exempt, we don't have to do this, therefore we're not going to provide that information. And so I don't want to be the one that stands in the way of that. The taxpayers are on the hook. Some $5+ trillion in mortgages, and we've spent hundreds of billions of dollars helping to bail them out. And if the public has a question they want an answer to, they should be able to ask that of that agency, and they should be responsible to asking for it. If they want to go and be a private entity, they can go be a private entity and not be subject to FOIA. But if the taxpayers are footing the bill and have the liability, they should be able to ask those questions.
Ms. Clay, it sounds like that you agree.
Yes, I certainly do agree, and I think that the legislation and the manager's amendment are ones that would certainly go a long way in helping this bill and making it a piece of legislation that's fair.
Mr. Clay,
sorry.
I'll state what I don't know, but I know you as a member. I deal with you as a member and a friend, but I will tell you that this is the kind of work that this committee covets when two members come and they have been able to work together, when they've been able to see probably a difficult issue the same way and have worked together for the same reason. That is, the accountability is good either way, not whether somebody's president or somebody wants to be president, but rather the bulk of the answer being good government.
And Mr. Chairman, I think that goes a long way towards promoting regular order in this Congress and actually looking at opportunities for both sides to work together and to get something done, to do our job for the American people. I had a town hall meeting where the public told me, "Where your boss?" My response was, "Yes, you are."
Well, I think there's a lesson here for us. This committee covets what both of you are doing. I'm very, very proud of you and delighted that you're here today and applaud both of your actions, which means that both of you have staffs that wanted this to happen also, so that, as the old saying goes, success has many mothers. And in this case, it has mothers and fathers. Thank you very much. Chairman Cole.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll take a minute first to acknowledge my friend's announcement that he's going to be leaving, which I regret very much. And we have this burst of bipartisanship today. I've seen you every place where you're a full member, and now up here with our good friend from Missouri as well. So it seems to me you ought to stay. I mean, you're just getting this exactly right. But I do regret that decision. I know I would certainly respect it, and we all sort of have an inner clock as to when it's the right time to be here and it's the right time to go. But my friend has made enormous contributions as chairman and to this institution just as a member. So, and this is an excellent example. I'm a little appalled that the institution is forcing you to do this legislatively, that they didn't see the wisdom of doing it themselves. It was an open secret for many years that people used to go to those places to get rich. And honestly, they have a lot to answer for in terms of some of the problems that we had. And my friends are both exactly right. The American taxpayer was appropriately generous here and certainly deserves to be appropriately informed when the public investment is this great. So you're both to be commended. And again, like my friend, the chairman, I appreciate you all working together. And I have no doubt that the suggestions from the minority side made the legislation that much stronger. So it just says a lot about both of you that you're here. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the chairman's comments. I will tell you, Tom has a lot of wisdom to him, but progress is one of those things that he insists on, and we recognize this for what it is, and thank you. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm hearing something that I very rarely hear around here, and that is consensus. So I don't want to screw up this moment by asking questions, so I will yield back my time.
Chairman Hillsback's time. Thank you very much. The gentleman from Georgia who got a good haircut also, which I did not, but I will next week.
I can recommend a good barber to you.
Yes, sir.
Chairman.
And you told me you got your money's worth.
It's a number two. It's a number two comb there on the side. And I serve on the Budget Committee as the designee from the Rules Committee. And my question to you is, I see the CBO report that says it's going to cost about $2 million to set this up and $1 million ongoing to keep it happening. I'm thinking that the motivation here isn't just good government to provide information, but good government to provide accountability, which may well lead to different spending decisions. As Chairman Cole said, it's no secret that folks have gone down there to get rich over previous years. I was just wondering your opinion. You've studied this more than I have. Do you really expect this to be a cost to the taxpayer because of all the paperwork involved in compliance? Or do you expect this to be a money saver for the taxpayer because the accountability brought by this oversight is going to lead to different spending decisions?
Well, certainly, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and I do think people, when they know that the public can actually review and look over their shoulder, and that will have perhaps a very different effect on how things are done. Accountability is it's one of the mantras we all live by, and this provides greater accountability. Undoubtedly, there is some cost in personnel to be able to properly process this, and that's why I'm appreciative of the amendment that is moving forward, because I do think it is going to take them some time. They're not going to, on day one, have the people or the processes. There are other departments and agencies they can learn from, but they're going to need to staff up and do that. It's not an exorbitant number for an entity of literally has trillions of dollars worth of of mortgage liability associated with it. But ultimately, I do think it does save people money, that accountability is a good thing, and it is a positive thing that makes people more accountable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Clay?
Let me just utter what my friend said, and sunshine helps, and especially in agencies like this one, where people may have suspicions, but to open up those requests and for the public to see, I think, help. Let me also take a liberty and say that since the gentleman from Utah got to Congress, we have been friends, and I've enjoyed and had the pleasure of working with him for years, and he will be missed.
You're not announcing that you're departing in concert
Not at
with
this
him.
time. Not at this time.
Mr. Chairman, it would be worth doing even with the $10 million price tag, but I hope we'll keep an eye on this over the next couple of years. I think we're going to find out that those expenses are going to go down as a result of this sunlight and this disinfectant. I yield back.
Good point. Good point. Thank you very much. Gentleman from Florida, Judge
Thank you
Hastings.
very much, Mr. Chairman, and I thank both the gentlemen. Chairman Chaffetz, do you feel that sensitive information and personal privacy are going to be protected from FOIA requests under this legislation?
They need to. It's vital, and there are a couple of amendments. Mr. Johnson, as well as Ms. Plaskett, I believe, are offering amendments that help clarify that even to a greater extent. But FOIA has certain exemptions, and they're there for a reason, so they can protect personal privacy and personal information. And those exemptions, we can't see them abused, but they're there for a reason, and they should be at the same standard for Fannie and Freddie as they are for other departments and agencies. I'll remind the committee that we did a FOIA reform package, a very good bipartisan package that actually made it to the President's desk in a bipartisan way last year, and we need to build upon those strengths.
Mr. Clay?
Yes. As the chairman said, Mr. Johnson's amendment will exempt some information such as trade secrets and commercial or financial information, which I think is a protection that's a common sense approach to it.
All right, then I recognize, Mr. Chairman, that you asked for a structured rule, but do you support those two amendments being made a part of the process?
Yes, my amendment as well as Ms. Plaskett's and Mr. Johnson's. I'm very supportive of all three of those, yes.
Right, and I don't want to add to the funereal notion of your leaving us, Mr. Chairman. You haven't gone anywhere yet. You have a lot of work left in you, and thank you for all your service. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
didn't die, so.
It sounded very funereal the way they were presenting.
But thank you. I appreciate it.
You're
Thank you.
still
Thank you.
here.
Thank you.
All right, thank you
I
all.
hope the young chairman heard the word yet.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that word was yet.
Yeah.
Spoken well. Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the committee that would have a question for any of our witnesses? I want to thank you both for being here. Remind you that whatever you brought in writing, our awesome stenographers here, if you could leave that for. Gentlemen, you did well enough to get invited back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presentation, your authenticity, and most of all, your collegiality with each other.
Thank you, Mr.
very
Chairman and the
much.
member.
Is there any other member that would seek to be heard on H.R. 1695? H.R. 1695. Does the gentleman from Michigan wish to be heard? The gentleman, Mr. Conyers, would please come to the table. Is there? And so, excuse me, this was on 1694. I read this wrong. Chairman, please stay there. Is there any other member that would wish to be heard on 1694, Fannie and Freddie Open Records Act of 2017? Seeing none, this now closes the hearing portion of H.R. 1694. That was my mistake, Mr. Chairman. You're with it, John. I'm not on that, and I appreciate it. Okay, we've now closed the hearing portion of 1694. We'll now open up the hearing portion for H.R. 1695, Register of Copyrights, Selection and Accountability Act of 2017. We're expecting the gentleman, the chairman of the committee, Judiciary, Mr. Goodlatte, to be here. I see that the gentleman, Mr. Conyers, is here. Mr. Conyers, we're going to go directly to you. We're delighted to share without objection anything you have in writing. It will be entered the record. We appreciate you taking time to be with us today. Our awesome stenographer can't wait to see what you brought forward. The gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Judge Hastings, Mr. McGovern, I'm glad to be before you and the rest of the Thank you. The Register of Copyrights Selection and Accountability Act. I'm the lead co-sponsor of this bipartisan and bicameral legislation, which passed our House Judiciary Committee by a vote of 27-1. To begin with, this bill evolved directly from the bipartisan copyright review process that Chairman Goodlatte initiated back in 2013. The Judiciary Committee held 20 hearings and heard from over 100 witnesses on how to update the copyright laws for the 21st century. This bill is a product of bicameral collaboration with our Senate colleagues as well, including Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, Ranking Member Dianne Feinstein, and Senator Pat Leahy, former chairman. In addition, this measure, by elevating the stature of the register and making the position directly accountable to Congress, will ensure a strong and vibrant copyright system that fuels our economy, creates jobs, and promotes a diverse range of views. Today, the copyright businesses contribute more than $1 trillion to our nation's economy and generate foreign sales of almost $180 billion annually. These businesses are also tremendous job creators, employing more than 5 million workers. So I'll submit the rest of my statement and accordingly urge all of my colleagues to support this bill. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before you to answer any questions. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much. We're delighted that you're here. We also welcome today the young gentleman, young chairman from Virginia, to also not only give testimony, but to welcome him back. We had Mr. Chaffetz, who was in here earlier, Chairman Goodlatte, who really did a great job. It looks like, once again today, collegiality is alive and well at the Rules Committee, and we're delighted that you're here as long as you agree with the gentleman on your bill. Chairman's recognized.
Well, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much, and thanks to all the members of the committee for this opportunity to testify today about the Register of Copyright Selection and Accountability Act of 2017. As you have heard from the young former chairman of the committee, Ranking Member Conyers, this is a bipartisan bill, and it updates how the Register of Copyrights is chosen. Tomorrow is World Intellectual Property Day, so the floor timing for this bill is appropriate. And intellectual property has become a growing part of our nation's economy, and the Register of Copyrights has a critical role in numerous copyright policy issues. This legislation makes the register position subject to the nomination and consent process with potential candidates identified by a congressional selection panel. The legislation also makes the Register of Copyright subject to a 10-year term limit to match that of the Librarian of Congress. The Judiciary Committee has been considering how to modernize the Copyright Office for the past several years. Mr. Marino of Pennsylvania and Ms. Chu of California introduced legislation to make the register subject to the nomination and consent process 2 years ago. The position is now vacant, filled on an acting capacity by a well-regarded acting register. The need to fill this vacancy makes consideration of this legislation very timely. I would also point out that the director of the Patent and Trademark Office, who has an equally important voice on patent and trademark issues, is already subject to the nomination and consent process, and my legislation would mirror that for the Register. In fact, this legislation also follows precedent set for other legislative branch agencies as well. For example, the controller of the GAO is selected via a very similar process. Giving the legislature a larger role in selecting legislative branch officials makes sense and will help ensure that the Copyright Office is more accountable to Congress. H.R. 1695 was reported out of the Judiciary Committee by a bipartisan vote of 27-1. In addition to strong support from traditional copyright groups such as the Copyright Alliance and the publishing, movie, music, and software industries, the bill has been supported by a wide range of diverse groups such as the American Conservative Union, the AFL-CIO, the Heritage Foundation, the Directors Guild, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the Mexican-American Latina Organization, MANA, Americans for Tax Reform, and the Council for Citizens Against Government Waste. 3 amendments have been submitted to this committee for your consideration. I would recommend this committee offer its support for the amendments offered by Mr. Deutsch of Florida that would ensure that future registers hire personnel with the right IT background to develop a modern copyright registration system, and by Ms. Chu of California that would ensure that the mandatory deposit system that supplies the Library of Congress remains unchanged. I have concerns over the amendment offered by Ms. Lofgren of California, since the legislation has been drafted to avoid making it focus about one register or one librarian. The proposed Lofgren amendment would create a special carve-out for the current librarian to pick the next register. Whatever one may think of the current librarian, Congress should not be carving out a special provision for her at the same time we update the hiring process for all future registers of copyright. So I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment offered by Ms. Lofgren. And I would note that the librarian will have a role, along with 6 congressional leaders, in selecting the list that will be submitted to the President for his consideration for nomination of the next Register of Copyrights. So I request that the Rules Committee grant an appropriate rule that allows for expeditious consideration of H.R. 1695.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Chairman Conyers, do you concur with the gentleman?
Completely. I am in total agreement with you.
Thank you very much. That is an issue that this committee wants to not only weigh and measure both your recommendations, but I think you see this issue the same way, and I will be honest, your opinion does matter. And I may quote that tomorrow. Thank you very much. Chairman Cole.
Just want to thank my 2 friends for being here, for them working together, and what really, these things sometimes seem mundane. They're really not. It's really important to get these things right, and I know you guys have obviously taken the time to do it. So I appreciate both of your good work on this, and boy, we need breaks around here more often. I've never seen so much bipartisanship on this committee and the legislation since I've been here. So I don't know how you set this up, Chairman, but pretty amazing stuff. But again, I want to thank our friends for being here and for all both of them do to make this a great institution. Without a yield back.
Chairman Cole, thank you very much. The ranking member, the gentleman from Massachusetts.
I want to thank both gentlemen for being here. I guess the only point of disagreement I would have with what has been said is that even if you disagree with Ms. Lofgren's amendment, I think we ought to have an opportunity to vote on it on the House floor. I think it ought to be made in order. I don't know whether it will or not, but I think people can debate it, and if you don't agree with it, you vote no. But
Gentleman, yield.
I'm happy to yield.
Thank you. I appreciate not only you yielding, but this is a good discussion. I think the discussion that did take place before I walked in here, I was waiting to find out about the committee. And I believe that the bottom line to it, with being fair to everybody, is they want to move. They started moving 2 years ago towards getting this person who would represent us effective quickly, as opposed to waiting maybe 10 more years. Because really what happens is, if Ms. Lofgren's amendment did pass or it became law, we would wait up to 10 more years before we achieved what we've been trying to do. And in fairness, I looked at it from an issue the way you did until I looked at the desire on a bicameral, bipartisan basis that's been over a number of years, that's been vetted through a lot of people who know more than I do because they've been dealing with the issue. So I just want you to know the gentleman is entitled to his opinion, and I respect that, but I made a decision based upon that you just saw took place, where the people who are in charge of this. So I respect what you're saying, but I wanted to go through my mathematics or gymnastics with you. I thank the gentleman for yielding to me.
Well, I appreciate the gymnastics, but, I mean, if the Lofgren Amendment were to pass, that would represent the will of the House. And that's the way this place is supposed to work. I'm not saying it would pass, I'm just simply saying that's the way this place is supposed to work. If a majority here decide to vote a certain way, that should carry the day. And so I appreciate the gentleman's comments, but I want to be on record as saying that I think, and I'm not even sure I support the Lofgren Amendment, I just think that it ought to be made in order. With that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Is there any other member of the committee that would seek time? The gentleman who is a member of the Judiciary Committee, also a member of the Rules Committee, so I know he has his favorite chairman before him right now, the gentleman from Georgia.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, do not make me choose in this time of flip. No, I do want to just speak. I'll be on the rule tomorrow, but I think the issue here is one of importance. This is a huge area of concern for our committee, and it's something the chairman had made, a very much of a commitment on this, and the ranking member, who we've worked with very strongly on this, has done such a great job. I concur with the assent. This was a very well-debated discussion when we had it in committee. There was a lot of discussion on both all amendments brought out, and I think the chairman and the ranking member in agreement with the other two. And then I think it was a very good, strong point made, is that we're actually looking to make sure that this is a copyright register office that is fit for the 21st and 25th and 22nd century, for the future, not just backwards. And I think this is what this bill does. This allows this, and I think the amendment actually impairs that. I understand the nature in which it was presented. I appreciate that, but I think, I could agree with both my chairman and ranking member on the Judiciary Committee on the recommendations going forward, and look forward to not only this being a first step, because there's a lot of other pieces left to have with this conversation that we started even 3 years ago. And the ranking member has been very part of that, much of that part, and the chairman has done an outstanding job laying that groundwork. So I think the recommendations from myself and from the committee, I do agree with. And I just wanted to share that, and I yield back.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman?
Judge Hastings.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have questions of either of our witnesses, but I would like to take the liberty to congratulate Ranking Member Conyers on something he did quite some years ago, and that is he made this month, by way of Congressional Act, National Jazz Appreciation Month. And as a jazz aficionado, I'm delighted that he did that, and I just want to congratulate him. If I were to tie it into this particular measure, I'm absolutely certain over the course of time, the significant number of individuals that he has interfaced with are assuredly protected by this legislation. Otherwise, I wouldn't think that he would have his name on it. Okay.
Thank you very much. Did you want to defend yourself there, John?
Don't listen to jazz. You need to catch up.
Well, I thought at first you were going to refer to my passion for Dr. Martin Luther King's bill. And I realized that we've been working together on a number of issues across the years, and I thank you for the reference.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis.
Boy, there's so many accomplishments to congratulate the young ranking member on. I wouldn't know where to start, but that adds to the list. My colleague from Florida, I appreciate that. I want to briefly, I'll be running the rule on the floor, so I'll save most of the debate for there, but I wanted to characterize the Lofgren Amendment differently in a different way than Mr. Goodlatte mentioned it. What the amendment would basically do is it would allow the current librarian to fill the vacancy, and the way to do that is it allows it to solve the immediate problems, to modernize and try to get the modernization going smoothly and timely, and then provide the political space to figure out a solution without the urgency that it has now. So the reason I strongly support it is rather than perceive this as something that only applies once and is in a different order, I would say we need to make this simple fix, and then we need to have a more thorough debate around here as to how we want to reform the entity, to have a bit of a cooling off period, so we're not just really having an entire legislative debate based on problems caused by a particular employee or a weird structure. And we need to remove that immediacy from the context of the debate by allowing the appointment. And then I think it's more appropriate to have the debate without that degree of personalization and urgency that is kind of artificially taken on absent a fix like the Lofgren Amendment would provide. So I'm supportive of the Lofgren Amendment. I hope it's made in order and we can take that to the floor as well, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I respect every member of this committee, and we even had a discussion before we came in. I was late for a few minutes because we engaged in this discussion also, and I would like to say to the gentleman that I respect your ideas, and I appreciate you speaking up about in support of that you believe. Thank you. Is there any other member that would seek time? I want to thank both of you for taking time to be up here. Quite honestly, it's good to see you. John, I think you look good. Bob, you look younger than ever. So take that as good news. We appreciate your time up here. Please do remember, awesome stenographer would count on you leaving anything you brought in writing for your presentation that would aid her. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Just 1 second, please. Is there any other member of the committee or the committee that is here that would seek time to give testimony? Seeing none, the gentleman from Massachusetts.
I'd just like to ask unanimous consent to insert in the record a statement by Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee of Texas on H.R. 1695.
Without objection, we will enter that into the record. Thank you very much. Any other feedback that we've got? I would like to take 1 minute to let you know that Saad Munid, who is a junior from Rider University, which I had not known, in New York City, but one of my interns who has been with me for this semester is here at the Rules Committee, and I'm delighted that we have another great student from Rider University who is a part of this and up at the Rules Committee today to see us. Okay. What I'd like to do is we've now heard testimony. This closes the hearing portion of H.R. 1695. I would appreciate if we would take about a 5-minute break here, that we attempt to make sure that we're huddling up on moving forward. We need a little bit of time for paperwork. We're going to get that done, and so subject to call the chair. We'll be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you. Rules Committee come to order, and thank you very much. I appreciate each of our members and our staff allowing us to finalize our work. I want to make sure that I properly say this. So we have, as we know, we have taken testimony from two specific groups, two panels today. Earlier I announced two rules. We do not have final off the cost for the bill where we were dealing with freedom of information. So I am going to not move forward on that at this time. We have closed the hearing. When I finish tonight, we're going to pass out this one rule. We're going to be subject to the call of the chair. We'll come back when we have that, and I will tell you that I do not have a time yet when that will be resolved. So I'm going to anticipate that it will not be tonight. So I'm trying to provide you information. I'm trying to provide you information so that, you know, it's a good news, bad news, I guess.
They're not being tonight is good information. It's helpful information. Thank you.
So when we get it, we will notify
Right.
our ranking member and our staff director, Don. We'll get back to you, but we do not have that yet, and I apologize for that. Good. Okay. Chair will now be in receipt of a motion from the gentleman, the young chairman from Oklahoma.
Mr. Chairman, I move the committee grant H.R. 1695, the Register of Copyright Selection and Accountability Act of 2017, a structured rule. The rule provides 1 hour of general debate equally divided and controlled by the chair and the ranking minority member of the Committee on the Judiciary. The rule waives all points of order against consideration of the bill. The rule makes an order an amendment in the nature of a substitute consisting of the text of Rules Committee Print 115-13 and provides that it shall be considered as read. The rule waives all points of order against the amendment in the nature of a substitute. The rule makes an order only those further amendments printed in the Rules Committee report. Each such amendment may be offered only in the order printed in the report, may be offered only by a member designated in the report, shall be considered as read, shall be debatable for the time specified in the report, equally divided and controlled by the proponent and unopponent, shall not be subject to amendment, and shall not be subject to a demand for division of the question. The rule waives all points of order against the amendments printed in the report. The rule provides one motion to recommit with or without instructions. Finally, Section 2 of the rule provides that H.Res. 254 shall be laid on the table.
You've now heard the motion from the gentleman from Oklahoma, the vice chairman of the committee. Is there amendment or discussion to that? Gentleman from Colorado.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment to the rule. I move the committee make an order and give the necessary waivers for the amendment to H.R. 1695 by Representative Lofgren, number 1, that ensures that the Librarian of Congress would remain responsible for filling just the current Register of Copyrights vacancy. As I addressed earlier in the hearing with Mr. Goodlatte, this would allow us to take the urgency and the personalities involved, kind of remove them from the matter, allow the reforms to move forward, and give Congress the space to make a decision without that urgency of particular personnel, which I always think in any management situation is the wrong way to go about making a decision because of particular people involved. So I hope that the committee will adopt my amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? Seeing none, the vote will now be on the post amendment. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Noes have it, noes
call,
have
Mr.
it.
Chair.
Gentleman asks for a roll call vote. Clerk will poll the committee.
Mr. Cole? No. Mr. Cole, no. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall, no. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, no. Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins, no. Mr. Byrne? Mr. Byrne, no. Mr. Newhouse? Mr. Buck? No. Mr. Buck, no. Ms. Cheney? Ms. Cheney, no. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
Aye.
Mr. McGovern, aye. Mr. Hastings? Mr. Hastings, aye. Mr. Polis? Mr. Polis, aye. Mr. Chairman?
No.
Mr. Chairman, no.
Clerk will report the total.
3 yeas, 8 nays.
The amendment is not agreed to, not agreed to. Further amendment or discussion?
Discussion,
Gentleman of
Mr.
Massachusetts.
Chairman. Yeah. So, Mr. Chairman, as I'm looking at this rule, I see that you're scrapping the rule we did right before the recess that would have added another amendment to Trump Care. And that amendment, if I recall, was so important that we had an emergency meeting on it, and that the amendment, I was told, was fully vetted by anyone who matters around here. fact, Mr. Chairman, I think you said that the idea had been accepted by all the appropriate people, including the President of the United States, including the leadership of this body, and you said, and I quote, "and we are trying to lock it in. This one has been agreed to, and we're going to add it," end quote. So something must have changed since then, since it looks like we're not locking it in after all. And in fact, we're doing the exact opposite here today. So if I get this straight, the new plan is to kill the old plan without having a new plan ready. And that sounds familiar. Clearly, you guys are better at repealing than at replacing. And so I would just say to my colleagues, this is why we've been urging you not to rush. You have 2 weeks to think about this, and I think you realize this is not a very good idea. And if you just take a little bit more time, I think you could have saved yourself from all of this. But I do think it's worth noting that I think we're am I tabling it, right?
Yes, sir.
So, anyway, I just thought it was important to note that for the record.
Thank you very much. Other discussion? For the record, I will tell you that I believe the gentleman knows there have been ongoing, continuous dialogue that resulted in that agreement. There is further agreement. We're simply not prepared to move forward on the bill with all the agreements being reached. And so we're going to table that rather than calling it up now. And rather than doing that now, we're going to hold our firepower for a little bit. And I do appreciate the gentleman not only reading the bill, but properly responding accordingly, and I appreciate the gentleman's feedback.
And I appreciate your answer, but just as a bit of advice, friendly advice, is that maybe before we move to grant a rule for something, we ought to have decided what the path we're going to actually pursue is. And I get it, but I mean,
Well,
at the time, I know the Vice President was up here, and this was a done deal. We had to meet in an emergency session. We could have. I asked at the time, why don't we wait until after the recess? And I was told we're going to lock it in because this is a done deal.
Well, as a matter of fact, it may or may not be a done deal, but what I tell you it is, it's an ongoing dialogue, and I did indicate at that point that I felt like that it would be important from a perspective of an agreement when you deal with people to move forward. If that's an agreement, then move forward. When we get other agreements, we move forward with them.
Well, if I could just,
Yes, sir.
one more bit of friendly advice. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
When you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. And I think the Trump care hole is deep enough. But since we have a hole, maybe we could just make it Trump care's final resting place and move on to something that will actually help people. And maybe sit down and actually work in a bipartisan way to figure out ways we can improve the Affordable Care Act. But that's just friendly advice. Take it for what it's worth. But I appreciate the time, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Thank you very much. Further amendment or discussion? See none, we'll now vote on the motion from the chairman from Oklahoma. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Accordingly, the gentleman seeks roll call vote. Clerk will poll the committee.
Mr. Cole? Aye. Mr. Cole, aye. Mr. Woodall? Mr. Woodall, aye. Mr. Burgess? Mr. Burgess, aye. Mr. Collins? Mr. Collins, aye. Mr. Byrne? Mr. Byrne, aye. Mr. Newhouse? Mr. Buck? Mr. Buck, aye. Ms. Cheney? Ms. Cheney, aye. Ms. Slaughter? Mr. McGovern?
No.
Mr. McGovern, no. Mr. Hastings?
No.
Mr. Hastings, no. Mr. Polis?
No.
Mr. Polis, no. Mr. Chairman?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, aye.
Clerk will report the total.
8 yeas, 3 nays.
The motion is agreed to. Accordingly, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins, will be handling this for Republicans,
And the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Polis.
and the
from
gentleman, Mr.
Democrats.
Polis, will be handling this from,
Mr. Chairman?
yes, sir.
Yeah, just continuing, and I appreciate very much your giving us insight as far as the schedule itself is concerned, recognizing now we have one more rule that may come up sometime on tomorrow or thereafter. What else can we anticipate
Thank you.
in the way of meetings?
Thank you. That is a good question, and while I was not prepared to make an announcement, I am prepared to say that we will once again stand in recess on H.R. 1694, but what I would say to you is the things which I believe are immediately in front of us deal with the funding issue, and for the life of me, I don't know that, I would guess we're going to meet soon on that, but I will tell you that we're going to have to meet this week.
Sure.
And I would tell you that if you ask me the outcome of that, I would like to hope that we would fund the government through the remainder of the year, through September 30th. I don't know that answer. What I do know is that this is being played out in the media, and I do know that evidently the President of the United States indicated that he would, as I understand it, I did not hear it myself, but would allow us to move forward without some ideas that he had placed on the table on the wall.
Right. Okay.
But I do not know the final action there. What I will tell you is, we're going to do that this week. I'd like to ask that you know that we're going to meet this week on that.
On the continuing resolution.
I would expect that that would be done.
Either the 17 appropriations or continue it for a period of time for further discussion.
One way or the other.
What, if anything, about health care itself, Mr. Chairman? Do you anticipate anything this?
I believe substantively what I've seen reported is we are not to a point of making a decision, reference the point that Mr. McGovern was trying to make with me. We are not at that. We're trying to get our work done this week and don't want to get jammed up on that.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anything further from the committee? Okay, we'll be subject to the call of the chair on H.R. 1694.